Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to How to Exit. Today I'm here with Christine Nicholson, who is a engaged speaker and seasoned expert on happy endings, exit, and succession planning. Thank you today for being here. Sorry, I'm a little thrown off a loop because we had a couple technical difficulties as we were getting started there. But thank you for being here today, Christine.
It's a real honor and pleasure to be on, especially since you've had so many podcasts. Like you really are in the top 5% for getting so many across the line.
Awesome. Cool. I have actually, there's a couple ranking systems out there that list us as number one for a long time. And now we just got bumped down to number two. And it's like, on like Feed Runner and some of the others. I really want everybody to kind of know who you are and why you're here today, because I think you have an incredible gift to share with people. Tell everybody kind of how you ended up on a show about mergers and acquisitions. Give us your origin story.
Thank you. Well, this is less to do with me and more to do with two key stories. When I was very young, I come from a military family, and my favorite uncle kind of went off the path and did the daring thing of setting himself up in business. And of course, the family were all rubbing their hands together going, "Oh, it's doomed to fail. What are you doing?" And he was really good technically, but he wasn't very good at business. And of course, the business failed and it crushed him. And I just looked at at my uncle and thought, I never want anybody to feel like that. So it was always in my mind, how could I do something about it? Roll forward a few years, and I'd been through more jobs than most people have had hot dinners. I'm a military veteran. I did a couple of years in banking, and then I qualified as an accountant. And I was really lucky that I did this amazing apprenticeship in my first qualified job, where we took a family-owned business that had 40 individual businesses, and they all needed to be sold. And so there I was, my first experience of M&A, and I was right at the cutting edge of 40 businesses all being sold all at the same time. It was glorious chaos. And I just learned so many things that I still go back to. And then literally, as we sold every company out of that family, I closed the office. I locked the door. I wrote my own redundancy check. I was literally the last one switching off the lights. And I went to work with a client to help that client get the happier ending that he was looking for, the exit. But within 3 weeks of us working together, he had been up a ladder fixing his house when the ladder slipped and he went with it. And 7 days later, he was dead. And we hadn't been working together long enough to make a difference. And a 10 million, the short story is that a 10 million turnover company with nearly 100 employees, as a result of his death, became an insolvent company within 12 months. And again, my whole memory of my uncle being crushed because of this was completely reinforced by how do I make sure this never happens again? And it has been the key thing that's really driven me throughout my career. And in the meantime, I've started other businesses and sold them and gone and rescued other businesses. And I did a bit of bankruptcy rescue along the way. But now my total focus is helping business owners who are still working in their business get out of the day-to-day so that they can focus on having that happier exit, where they don't end up with post-transaction regret. They actually stand a fighting chance of completing the transaction, because most of them fail. And they get the value of their life's work, the things that they've put their sweat, stress, and sacrifice into, and make sure that that ends up in the right place, i.e., their bank account.
It's, it's shocking that that happens still to this day, that people, they don't have their stuff lined up. You see me cringe when you talked about the latter story. I grew up a painter's son, so from the time I was 16 to the time I was 20, one of the first business experiences I had was I ran a painting company. My dad turned it over to me when I was 16, and I ran it until I was 20. But, that said, I love that you have the passion for it, you've got the experience in it. The business owners truly need it, and so many business owners, I've seen more than one where, business owners, they work until they either something happens to them, they have a heart attack and stuff, and a beautiful business crashes and burns because they weren't prepared for that, right? I originally thought I was gonna create something to solve that problem, kind of an emergency team that could swoop in and run it until it could be sold, but there's so many legalities and logistics of that, it's almost impossible to do. I talked to 4 or 5 different attorneys to figure out if we could solve that problem, where we were, if you had somebody that died in a 3, 4, $5 million company that we could step in, run it, we would find somebody to be the operator until it could be sold. So, in the IT space, I come from the IT and tech world. There's a thing called contingency planning, right?
Yeah.
Emergency planning, like what happens if, and so, you build in redundancies and stuff like that. I'm shocked that more business owners don't. That most business owners that say, right? Like right now, if something happened to me, there's instructions on my computer. My wife knows where to find them. She knows how to get into every one of my business bank accounts. She knows my calendar. She's on my calendar for every meeting I go to. She knows how to get to my attorneys. Like everything's there, right? She's on every account I have. She can walk in there and draw money on any account I have. And the same way with her little businesses and stuff she does. I might list myself as a 5% owner, but I'm on the accounts, I'm everything. That way, if something happens, it can continue. So many business owners fail to do that.
98% is of owner managed businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, once you get past being owner managed, but an owner managed business is 98% of them are completely unprepared. And the sad thing is that I hear them being really proud about, God, my business couldn't survive without me. And they say that with a sense of pride. And
Mhm.
actually what it is it their value is their internal value is driven by how much their business needs them. And if you think about that, this is an inanimate object that is just a bunch of noughts and zeros in the digital world and a bunch of legal papers in the dusty old world. And that the digital, the noughts and zeros and the dusty old paper needs you, and you feel validated by that. Well, I hate to say this, but if this is you, then please, at the risk of sounding brutal, get a grip, because people need you, not dusty old things. And it's just a shift of mindset to say, that the people in the business, the stakeholders, the customers, the suppliers, the employees, by all means, let them need you, but don't let your business need you, because that is just not validating at all.
There is something here in the United States, and I'm sure you have it there in the UK and around the world, where you've done something for so long that it becomes, and business owners are notorious for this, the business becomes part of your identity, part of who you are. I can walk up to, and I tried this, I should carry a mic with me sometime and do this, go sit at a coffee shop and just meet random people. And within the first 2 or 3 minutes, go, tell me who you are. And I guarantee if I maybe not you and I, because we're trained differently, but if I said, "Hey," if I met to, somebody and said, "Hey, Christine, thank you for, saying hi. My name's Ron. You said your name's Christine." I was like, "Well, who are you?" I guarantee you tell me what you do. Within the
Yeah.
first, instead of saying I'm a father of, like for me, I'm a father of two. I like to travel. I love the ocean. I go to the ocean 2 or 3 times a week. When I moved away from it, I missed it constantly. I would tell you, well, I run a podcast. You tie your identity to what you do, and a lot of times I'll do it, and I'll look at people and smile and say, "I didn't ask what you did, I asked, 'Who are you?'" And they don't know how to separate the 2.
Mm. It's why I always say when people say, who are you? I say, I am actually an expert in happier endings. And I mean, I'm very lucky. Most of my clients are male, and that kind of joining always gets a smile, and it definitely breaks.
You're a massage therapist?
It definitely breaks the ice.
Yeah.
So, but you're right that there's an academic um, theorem around this, and it's called role identity fusion. And all of these TV programs that you get, like Shark Tank, and I mean, we've got something in the UK called Dragon's Den. You know, these poor business owners come and stand before the dragons and they say, here's my idea, and I want £1 million of your money for 2% of my business that hasn't sold a thing. And of course, the dragons reinforce the whole role identity fusion by saying, great idea, but you're totally uninvestable, or idea, and we'd love to invest in you if you had a better idea. So what they're doing is reinforcing that thing of your identity is closely related to whether you can actually bring them money and create value in a quite unhealthy way. When actually, when you've got through the startup phase and you start employing people, your business is worth more the less it relies on you. And so my strong advice is go and get yourself a hobby and start finding joy in that hobby so that you don't want to be at work, or you don't feel like you have to be at work, because that's your identity. Your identity is somewhere else. But one of the key things I always start with most of my clients is figuring out, if you had more time to spend doing the things you enjoy with the people that you love, what would you be doing? Because now let's explore how we can actually get more of that into your life. Because if you've got something to go to, it's easier to get out of your business. But the problem with business owners, and boy, have I been guilty of this. I mean, we'll talk about ladders. I'll tell you a funny story in a second. But the problem with business owners is when you start up, you're completely engrossed in it. And your first job is getting your first customer. And your second job is getting your first customer to pay. And then, of course, it's that cycle, second customer pays. And all of a sudden, everything is literally woven like cable cover, you know, like the covers that protect metal cables. So it's just so fundamentally part of what you are. And I got drawn into this in what I call my first grown-up business. I was married at the time, and I was spending every waking hour at work. And we agreed, in an attempt for me to get more balance, that I wouldn't work on Sundays. So now this was great because we would go and do something on Sunday, and that would make me feel less guilty about not working. And my husband would play golf on a Saturday, which meant that I could spend Saturday morning working like a little beaver. So, but anyway, one weekend, the days got flipped around, and my husband was playing golf on a Sunday, which meant I couldn't work on the Saturday. And my office was locked with a mortise lock that I didn't have the key to. But I got clever, you see, because I knew I wasn't going to get into that office on Sunday. So I left the window open on Friday. And it was my husband who took my car, because his car didn't have any petrol in it, my car, off to the golf club to play a 4 or 5 hour round of golf. No problem at all. I can get in that office, into the garage, get the ladders down, put the ladder up against the window, climb the ladder, climb in the window. Actually, at that point, as I'm climbing in the window, I thought, this is not going to be comfortable climbing back out of this window. So it was a bit of a hesitation there. But then I thought, nope, get in and do work. And I was in full flow. But I hadn't tied the ladder on. Got a bit windy. And all of a sudden, I heard the screech of this ladder scraping the bricks along the front of our house. And I thought, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden, an even bigger crash as the heavy ladders hit the roof of my husband's car, smashing the sunroof and the windows. And I'm stuck in an office that I can't get out of, knowing that I'm now going to get caught because I've been sneaky and I'm working and the ladder has just smashed up my husband's car. And that was a proper wake up call and it shouldn't have happened. And it's funny to look back on it now, but I tell you what, the hour I had to wait for him to come back from that golf game was the longest hour of my life.
Imagine his face when he pulled up and seen the ladder, like, "What the hell?" Right? Did you talk to him on the phone or something before he got there, or did he just pull up to a driveway with the ladder laying on his car?
No, it was in the days before mobile phones,
Oh.
and my office did not have a phone in it. So I couldn't even phone for help. I couldn't dial 999. And honest, I wanted somebody to come and rescue me and just take me out of there. Honestly, if the ground could have swallowed me up, I would have been very happy. But yeah, I couldn't even attract the attention of a neighbor. I just had to sit there and wait for the executioner's axe to fall. I was very, very unpopular.
It's very common for entrepreneurs to do that. My goal, like, even with this show, my goal is to get on the mic and chat with you guys, and I even have other people who do guest interviews and stuff like that. I want it to be bigger than me. And, it's hard to do with the podcast, but, I have guest hosts and we're doing other things, and eventually there'll be other people that'll be on here interviewing, people and, make the show bigger than just, Ron Skelton. I took all my photos off all the logos and stuff about a year ago, so if you ever see, like, my older stuff, there's always me beside the person. Now it's just a logo beside them. But the reason is I can't be telling all these, companies and sellers that you can't be the central image of your company if you ever wanna sell it or ever wanna do anything, then I'm a central image of everything I do. It
Yeah.
just felt inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
So, not that I would ever sell the podcast, I don't know that I would, but, I'd buy some. I'd buy somebody else's podcast if they have it out there and they wanna sell it. It's in the business space. I love doing this thing. But, that said, everything at some point has to be. There's gotta be some value to it, and the only way this will have any value, and only most businesses have any value, is if you get it to be bigger than yourself. But it takes a lot. It's hard not to tie your identity to something, and that's just one element of a great exit plan is separating yourself. What are some of the other things you see business owners doing that they probably ought to stop if they wanna ever have a great exit or have a decent succession plan?
The number one absolutely nailed on big thing that they have to do is believe that someone else can do it. Because once they get the biggest journey anyone's going to take is the 7 inches between their ears. And once they believe that someone else can do it, and I don't mean do it better or it can be done differently. It can be done more efficiently. It definitely won't be done the same way, i.e. the way that you think. But if you can just believe that someone else can do it, because let's face it, there's what, 8 billion people on the planet. There's almost nobody that is so uniquely gifted that they're the only ones who can do your thing. And then I think the subtext of that, so almost number two to that is it's not really an action, but again, it's a belief. And it's why do you expect your employees to think like you? You're an entrepreneur. You started something from scratch. If they thought like you, they wouldn't be working for you and probably won't once they figure this out. So, so the expectation that, taking away the belief that you're the only one who can do it, and then actually attaching the belief or removing the belief that your employees have to think like you, they think like themselves. You can train them to behave in a particular way. And I always say that processes are the single and most creative things that people can do. Because here's the process. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thingy. If something goes wrong, the first thing we can do is say, okay, where in the process is the process broken? And it's either broken or it's not. And if it's broken, we can fix it so that it never happens again. But typically what happens is somebody didn't follow the process. And they did it for one of two reasons and two reasons only. They either didn't know the full process because it wasn't visible enough, and that's ridiculous because everything should be transparent. But business owners have a tendency to go, oh no, I need to keep that secret. Okay, so they either didn't know, in which case educate them. And while you're at it, educate everyone else who needs to know, which is everybody, by the way. Or the employee is going to say, people like me don't follow processes. We do our own thing. We're creatives, darling. And my answer to that is, well, if you're so creative, go and create another job somewhere else. Because people here follow processes, because processes allow true creativity. Because it's a bit like Steve Jobs and Barack Obama. You only ever saw them wearing all the same thing. I mean, Steve Jobs, charcoal slacks, black polo neck, always the same thing every time. One reason why, because it removed the energy required to make a decision about something that was not important to them. Processes do exactly the same. If the client has a particular challenge or it requires delivery, then you follow the process so you get consistent delivery. And that frees the brain to do a whole load of other things, including being more productive.
I do that, right?
Yeah. So the first thing is always don't be attached to the fact that don't think that you're the only one who can do it, because literally everyone on the planet can typically do what you do.
For anybody that's watching the show and hasn't noticed yet, I do the same thing. Now I wear the exact same thing every day. So I have 5 of these shirts. I have a dozen black T-shirts that go underneath it. My wife threw a monkey wrench in it, and she bought me a turquoise shirt because she's seen that it was black on black, so sometimes I look like a floating head on the podcast, and occasionally I'll throw that one on, so I have one turquoise dress shirt. I love what you're saying there as far as the business owner separating themselves from the business and putting standard, procedures and stuff. I'm that creative type. I'm a big believer in repetitive tasks. I just bring other people in to do those, right? If I have to do something more than 2 or 3 times in a row consistently, it probably isn't gonna get done.
Yeah.
So, I outsource all that, I tease around and tell people I'd outsource brushing my teeth. I get somebody to show up at the right time each time, during the day. That said, I'm a big problem solver. I love to solve unique problems. I love to be around unique solutions. One of the reasons I love mergers and acquisitions, everything's so different. Every business owner I talk to is different. But I value that operator, that standard operating procedure. I've written many of them. I love creativity to the point where you figure out something works, but once it works, it should be a gear, a cog, and you basically wanna turn that gear over and over again. Hand that to somebody who loves. I look for OCD people, like they want order and systems and processes, and this widget's supposed to be turned at this RPM in this direction 5 times. If
Yeah.
you're that person, then you're very valuable to companies because we need people that can turn those things out. You make more money repeating a successful process a million times over than you would coming up with new processes. New ideas are expensive to create, expensive to implement, and hard to prove.
Yeah.
And what happens, a lot of us entrepreneurs, and I've done this many a times in my life. I'm 52, and it took me, I wasn't probably until my late 30s, early 40s for me to figure this out, is there's more money to be made in simplicity than there ever is in complexity.
Simple things done well
Mm.
will always win over complex things executed badly.
Even
And
complex things executed perfectly because of the time concern, right? And a lot of business owners need that wake up call is the simplicity. If you can, not if you can, you should really write down what you do, make it as simple as possible, and get other people to do it. If somebody else can't do it repetitively, you're at risk, right? Because if somebody else can't do it repetitively and make money doing it, somebody you can hire in, how do you expect to sell that to another person? Because he needs to do what you do.
yeah, absolutely. And another big problem that business owners find themselves with is a failure to have really difficult conversations because they
Mm.
perceive the conversation as difficult. So I'll give you some examples. So when you start out, you hire your first employee, and usually if you get the right one, that person is like self-leveling cement. They run around and they make sure nothing falls between the gaps. And that makes them very valuable when you're very small. But as you employ more and more people, you've maybe got 2 or 3 of these self-leveling people, and they don't actually fit into a slot. And once you get to a certain size, they've actually outlived their usefulness to your business. And that doesn't make them any less valuable when they are adding value, but now they are causing problems. They are getting in the way. They're causing conflict. They're creating potentially silo working because people are trying to work around them. And instead of having a difficult conversation, because having a conversation with somebody that has been incredibly loyal to you to say, we've outgrown you and you need to move on to someone else who needs you, it's hard. Look, it's heartbreaking, but actually it's a gift both to you, to the people that are in your business, and to the person that you're letting go. But the amount of times that I've heard business owners say, I really don't need that person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it as awkward as possible until eventually they get the message that they don't belong here. And I'm thinking, why would you put yourself, the person that has been loyal to you, who is probably still only sticking around because they think you need them, and then all your other staff and everybody else who's suffering. So all of that pain and suffering because you won't have one conversation. And the labour laws here in the UK are a lot tougher than they are in the States. But, let people go to do. I mean, I've made thousands of people redundant, and that's a nasty conversation to have. But I like to think that I've done it through the years with practice, with great dignity. Because I remember my first redundancy conversation, and it was literally dragged into an office, and they said, well, this is really difficult, but there's kind of not a job for you. And then she picked up a box of tissues and put it in front of me and said, it's okay to have a good cry. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. No idea at all. What am I supposed to be crying about? Because she hadn't actually said, by the way, there's not a job for you. We're letting you go. This is just really difficult because there's kind of not a job here. I'm like, it would have been much better to just say, company's growing. This job doesn't exist anymore. Here's your payoff. What can I do to help you get the next job that's going to make your life better?
It's
But no,
interesting is I call those conversations grow or go, right? So I love to sometimes you can see that with the writing on the wall, and I'm a big believer in what you said. I meet so many business owners that they have good employees, but a lot of times they have the wrong butts in the wrong seats,
yeah,
right? So a lot of times, putting the right butt in the right seat is so critical in these companies that the owners are afraid to have that conversation. And I've looked at deals before, and they go, "Well, this employee has to stay. His father worked for me, and his grandfather worked for me, and I told him we'd take care of his grandchild." I was like, "The kid's mental." Right?
yeah,
I mean, not like really not chemically or genetically, not like Down syndrome or something. The guy just doesn't check in, and, like, the guy's just like a Looney Tune in this phrase of just doesn't connect with work.
yeah,
And the and I every employee hates them, and they're going around them, everything like that, and, "No, you have a commitment to those other families, I don't. Do you understand that I can't make that commitment to you?" And I'm a big believer in everything you have now, everything you've ever had in your past, and everything you ever wanna have in your future are directly correlated to conversations, right? It's conversations you've had, you should have had, that you should be trying to figure out how to have. And a lot of times those conversations could start really early. So if you
yeah,
start to see that the company's outgrowing somebody, you have a grow or go. Say, look, you're that self-leveling person. You've been with me since the start. We're at the stage right now where we're stabilizing, we're growing. Everything has to be very systemized and stuff like that. The only spot I would ever have for you is if you look around and see what we need and come back to me and tell me, where do you fit in? Right? What do you want to do next? And if I can help you get there. And a lot of times they'll even, if you have that conversation with people, they're like, they'll tell you, they know, they already know. And the conversation or the statement you made earlier about CEOs letting go of work, I believe there's a mathematical model that a lot of people might be favorable to looking at. If I can train somebody to be 60 or 70% as good as me, then that just freed up all those hours I took doing that task. So if a task takes me 20 hours a week,
yeah,
and, you can do that test at 70% as good as I can, then, okay, I just freed up my 20 hours a week, and technically, if you're profitable doing that task, if that's 70%, I pay you 100 grand a year, and you bring in the company 150 grand. Well, now it makes sense that, well, how many of those people would you hire? I'd hire as
Yeah,
many of those people as I could find. And a lot of business owners don't see it as a mathematical model.
I'm genuinely surprised at how many people don't really fully understand business mathematics, or
Mm,
that they don't understand their own numbers. They might be like really focused on revenue, or they might
mm,
be focused a bit more on bottom line, but they're never really focused on them and the real levers. So if you hire someone, how do you know that they're productive? And actually, this is a really easy one because anybody who's not thought about this, right, here's just one really quick measure. Okay. You take your rolling turnover and you divide it by the number of staff that you've got at the end of each month. And that will tell you how much revenue per year per your employee you've got. So when you start growing and you're bringing on employees, typically what will happen is you'll see a dip in your revenue per employee. But if they're really productive, within 90 days, you'll see that revenue per employee start to go back up. And if it's not going back up, then the new employees are either causing other employees to not be as productive, or they're not producing a return on their investment. And you've only got a few people to look at in that case. So, because quite often when a new employee comes in, as you're growing, they're going to highlight that there might be somebody who's been spinning a lot of plates, and that person who's been spinning a lot of plates has been keeping things together. And now the new person has come in and identified some cracks in your business. But equally, it could be that they've come in and they've worked really hard during their probation period. And then the minute they're confirmed as a probationer, they start swinging the lead and not actually working quite so hard because they feel like, "Phew, nailed it. My employment is protected," particularly here in the UK. I'm stunned by the levels of mediocrity that many business owners will tolerate in the name of loyalty or legacy or misaligned values. They'll get attached to something like an early customer who they were really grateful for in the early days, a bit like the self-leveling cement version of the employee. But now the resources that they put into this customer for the revenue that they get is actually fundamentally makes this customer a loss-making customer. And if you just dropped them because you knew the numbers, or move them on to someone else. I mean, everybody's got someone that they dislike or is a better fit. Doesn't matter which way you frame it. I've got plenty of people that I refer bad clients to. It's like, there you go, you deserve each other. But equally, I know that there are people that they might even be very lucrative, but I know that's only going to make me miserable. So let me go and introduce you to someone who's more aligned. But actually moving a client on that boosts, it might drop your revenue, but if it boosts your bottom line, that's where the business value is. And I tell you what, getting rid of your less than ideal clients is going to boost employee engagement and certainly boost their morale. Because I guarantee you there will be some of your customers that when their number comes up on the caller ID, they, instead of picking up the phone straight away, some of your employees are going to roll their eyes and they're going to go, let me get myself into a Zen-like state before I to this person.
It happens, yeah, it absolutely happens. It's funny is I'm a big believer in that too. Firing customers is not a bad idea. Sometimes customers are not profitable, and sometimes they're just more hassle than they're worth. In
Yeah.
the real estate investment world, when I had the real estate investment firm, I've fired private lenders, people who loan me money, and, like, that's one of the things in the real estate space, you either have more deals than money or more money than deals.
I mean, it is horses for courses. I mean, one of the things that it took me ages to really understand about myself was since I was like knee high to a grasshopper, it's been in my absolute DNA that I need to stop. Whether I am asked, and this is the thing I learned later on, is whether I am asked to or not. And I used to jump in there and fix something. It's a bit like seeing a little old lady on the pavement and helping her cross the road before asking her if that's what she wants. And that was me. And what I've learned to do now is listen and comprehend the problem and then say the magic words. And what would you like me to do about that? because sometimes it's okay for them to say, do you know what? You've done the best thing that you can do. You let me say this out loud. You've pinned back your ears and listened, and almost nobody does that these days. And it's really echoed the fact that I never used to listen. I just used to always be, how can I fix this really fast? And actually, in what I do now, that's since I've stopped trying to fix everything and actually said to people, where do you want my help in this? It's actually made me a better person. It's made me a much nicer person to be around and to be a friend with. It's actually made my business flow easier. And it's meant I can add more value to my clients because I'm only guiding them through the things that they want. It's their business, it's their life. They choose. My job really is to make sure that they're making informed choices and then to make sure that they can get on with it. Because there are some really sad statistics. 70% of business owners rely on their business to fund their retirement. Only 2% have ever had their business valued. 98% of business owners are guessing at what their future value is. And yet, it's a really easy, really cheap job to get your business valued so that you know what you're playing with. Almost 99% of business owners who are still working in their business have no idea what the exit journey is. You know, they'll know a few buzzwords, but they won't know the nuts and bolts of the journey. And that's like getting in your car and saying, take me somewhere. And the sat nav says, well, where do you want to go? And they went, I don't know, just drive. So they're effectively relying on the sale of their business by using the, I don't know where I'm going, just drive. And that is only going to lead to, it means business owners working for longer, potentially never retiring and dying at their desks. And it also means that their families, all of their employees, all of the stakeholders are going to be worse off.
Let's go back to the preparing somebody for exit. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about systems and processes and distancing yourself and having other people that can do what you do and stuff. This sounds like it takes a long time. When should people start planning for their exit and start planning for the next set of, leaders to take over and run their company?
It's a bit like the answer to this is the same as when is the best time to plant a tree. And it was the best time to plant a tree was 40 years ago. The next best time is to plant it the first time you think about planting it. And if that is today, then start planning it today. So the whole exit journey is a marathon. It's not a 100-yard sprint, no matter what anybody is going to try and tell you. Because there's loads of people out there that will say, oh, yeah, you do this, 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 and this. It's dead easy. Put your business on the market and it'll be sold in 3 months. Tosh, which is a technical UK term. I don't know if that translates in it. But basically, that is just the most rubbish that anybody can say. So starting to get ready should happen today because you don't know what's going to happen to you as a business owner tomorrow. You could get flattened by a bus. Getting prepared today means that your business has got a better chance of, better resilience, better chance of legacy and longevity, and a better chance of giving you and your family the value and the continuous income if you weren't able to work. So, but also remembering that it's a marathon, every 26.2 miles of a marathon is literally just one step followed by another step or followed by another step. And there's no need for speed here unless there is a compelling event that's coming up in your life. I've had clients who've been, they have terminal cancer. I've got to get this sorted before I die. Thankfully, they've been relatively rare. But if you start today, it doesn't matter how far you get. If something happens to you, at least you've already moved it forward, which means that whoever comes after you is starting from a better place, which is always going to be an improvement. Now, let's assume that you're completely immortal and nothing's ever going to happen to you because you're some kind of superhero and you're completely bulletproof. In which case, start today. And typically in a small to medium-sized business, you can be comfortably ready within 12 to 36 months, depending on the complexity of your business, depending on the people that you've got and the gaps that you have to fill. labor market is really hard at both sides of the Atlantic at the moment. So you may find it takes a bit more time from a people perspective, especially if you've got a big gap that you're going to externally recruit into. I always say the earlier you start means that you can start recruiting in at the bottom, train them in your way, and then that's actually elevating. Potentially, you could hire an apprentice today that in 10 years' time could be your chief exec. So why don't you just give
Absolutely.
yourself the best chance of getting the cheapest chief exec you have ever had by getting an
Mhm.
apprentice? And there is one book that I would recommend for people who are thinking of bringing in people at the apprentice level. And it's by an American, Donald Miller, comes from Texas. Donald Miller is a glorious human being. I love him. He's a former screenwriter for the film industry. And he now runs a marketing agency called Business Made Simple. And he actually wrote a book called Business Made Simple. And it's got 60 very short chapters. And the first 14 chapters are about people coming into the workforce that have never worked before. And it's 14 chapters on how to be a value driven professional. And frankly, it's 14 lessons to a business owner on how to induct a new employee into their business. It's a really clever piece of writing. So from a time perspective, if you've got 3 years, get your apprentice in now, because in 10 years' time, they're going to be potentially be your chief exec, get the right one. But typically it's going to take between 12 and 36 months.
And a lot of people think, well, well, I'm not ready to retire. Why would I start now? There's a cool thing that happens when you go through this process. I like analogies or things that models that people understand so they can relate to it. Think about if you've had a car for a while and you're thinking, well, I'm about to trade my car in and I'm ready for a new car. And then before you do that, it's like, I want the best trade-in value. So I go out and I have my car detailed and maybe I replace the tires and fix that crack in the windshield. And, you know, next thing I know, I'm driving down the road in this car that's fresh and clean, smells new. All the mechanical issues are gone of it. And you start going, why would I ever sell this? It's paid off. It's running good and it's really well maintained. I know who took care of it. And very often, and the same thing happens with business. If a lot of times I hear people go, "I'm gonna sell the business because I'm really stressed out and I need the time. I need time. I want to do something else, right?" And I was like, once you go through, and I explained to them, go through the effort to prep it for sale. And often you'll find that when it's truly ready to sell, you should only be needing to be looking at anything 3 to 4 hours a week. Like
Yep.
if it's truly ready to sell, you're looking at financials, you're looking at key performance indicators, you're talking to the general manager, chief operating officer, CEO, whatever you want to call it. You're just talking, you're having one-on-ones with the leaders of the company and you're more of kind of in the essential of the business world, you're kind of the chairman of the board. You're just
Yeah.
kind of taking a look at things and making sure that the vision and stuff is in alignment and heading down, that they're seeing everything and still kind of teaching them those little tweaks. But it's only 3 or 4 hours a week. Once you
Yeah.
hit that stage, you'll be surprised at how well you like the business again, how well you forgot how much you like to go out and talk to new customers and take them to golf and stuff that you've never had time to do that for years and years. And a lot of these business owners, they get to that point where they're ready to sell and you call them back and they're like, it's very often I'm getting now where I'm calling people back after 2 or 3 years of being in this space. I'm like, hey, have you got it ready to sell? Yeah, like, I'm never selling this, man. This is fun. They've got it up and running. They're meeting clients and they're only doing the little piece of the company they love and they only do it because they love it. That's the reward of this is you don't just because you're exit ready doesn't mean you have to exit. Just means you're ready to and you've got the most valuable company you possibly could have in your market, in your space, because you've taken all the steps. There's a lot of rewards to doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you just think about it, with an exit ready business, not only can you only have to be doing the things that you really enjoy. But the second thing is if something happens to you, your family is totally looked after. Because
Mhm,
part of exit ready business is saying, well, if something did happen to me, then this is exactly how I want the shareholding to be distributed or to be sold. This is how
mhm,
it's going to happen. This is, who's going to benefit. And you don't have any of that mess that's left or even the risk, like here in the UK, if you die without a will, then the crown actually takes your estate and the family has to fight to get the estate back. Like, why would you do that? I mean, if you're a business owner and you don't have a will, please just go and get one because it saves everybody a whole load of aggro. It really is one thing that I would say to protect your business.
I'll tell you, here in the United States, wills are okay, but functionally, they're almost worthless because the family's gonna fight all over them. 'Em, they're contested all the time, and they're a very weak document here in the United States. It's good to have one, and attorneys will tell you that you need to have one. I would go one step further. Have an attorney set up a trust, put all your when you get towards the end, if you're gonna hold stuff to the end, everything should be in a trust because the trust supersedes you in life, and the beneficiaries are just defined. There's no judge, there's no probate court, there's no squabbles. Nobody in the family can contest it. They can fight the trust, but a lot of times, like in the family trust and stuff, you can just write stipulations that anybody that takes the trust to court or fights the trust is written out of the trust, and that stops a lot of the frivolous BS,
Okay.
right? Wheels are, this is what I'd love to happen, and then the courts get to decide. The probate attorneys get to decide if they want to honor the will or if it was still in good standing at the time. A trust is a legal document that is really hard to beat. So, here in the United States, I would say use a trust.
And money definitely brings out or the opportunity or the perception that there's some unfairness in when it comes to money, it absolutely brings the worst out in people, which is why
Yeah,
I always say it's from a business owner perspective, have a decent shareholder agreement if there's multiple shareholders. Make sure that your corporate incorporation and constitutional documents are up to date because regardless of what you do in your will and potentially your trust, as long as everything is aligned, then people can't really fight it. Make sure
yeah.
that you make a public record of what your intentions are. Don't die and let everybody squabble.
I'm no attorney, and I can't give legal advice, but here in the United States, the other thing inside of those is buy-sell agreements and key man insurance, right?
Yeah.
Your corporate documents can have buy-sell agreements that says what happens if somebody goes, how
Yep.
are those shares handled? You can put insurance policies on it to where the insurance buys those shares out. You can put key man insurance policies on there to where, you'll get some funds until you get the person replaced. I think an exit plan and a succession plan are similar, but they can be two different things, right? An exit plan is I'm planning on selling it, and this is how I'm going to prepare it to sell. A succession plan is kind of the contingency plan. In this is what happens if I'm not here. This is
Yep.
who should be running things if I'm, not even if I'm totally gone. If I'm just unable to come to the office and do something, like I get physically injured, right? So having those procedures and stuff in place is like, here's what you say, here's what you don't say. Here's in charge because a lot of times those clients need to know who's in charge and they're okay, right?
Yes.
You could
Yep.
lose clients in a heartbeat if they find out the owner's in the hospital. "Well, I need these things. I can't what happens if he doesn't make it?
Yeah.
I need my widgets." And they'll go find another alternative supplier for the widgets when the real conversation and the real contingency plan or succession plan says, "If this happens to me, put this person in charge, tell the customers X, Y, and Z."
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the exit plan is how you get out of the day to day,
Mhm,
how you hand over control, and then how you transition ownership. So it's those three steps. The
mhm.
succession plan is for everybody in the business. It's like if this person was to leave, what would the succession plan be for it? Because it might be that if that person leaves in that particular role, that actually what you do is split the role into two. Maybe that you spread it out between existing resources, or it's you take the business to the next level. But succession planning is for every level and everybody within the business. And the exit plan typically is related to the behavior as the business owner. I think there's five things to really consider. Know your business value, then protect that value, which is all the things that we've literally just been talking about. Then get people to work with you to release you from the day to day, and I call that moving forward together. Because once you've valued it and protected it, now we can move the value forward and we can move everyone else forward. Then we need you as the business owner to let go with confidence based on the fact that you've done all these other things, which then positions you firmly to successfully exit your business at a time of your choosing. One very sad statistic is that of all the people who are disabled, only 5% of them were born disabled, which means that 95% of disability is acquired, not congenital. So that's a lot of people that become disabled. So you might not die, but you might not be able to work. And what would happen to your business in that eventuality? And preparing for exit against those kind of statistics means that you're going to have a business that you can fall back in love with, a business that works like clockwork, whether you're there or not, which means that you're only there when you want to be doing the things that keep you in flow. The value of your business elevates, which traditionally should result in higher dividends for you to go and enjoy all that free time that you've got. For me, it's a no brainer.
I've probably never disclosed this on the podcast, or if I have, only once or twice. So technically and legally, I'm disabled. So I need a walker to go more than a few hundred feet. I've injured my back so bad through both the military and years of pain and knee reconstructions and everything else. On top of that, car wrecks and everything like that.
Wow.
So that said, people don't understand or don't until it happens to you. You don't realize sometimes how both what you can live through and how fragile life can be.
Absolutely. I'm always amazed at human beings' capacity to believe that they are immortal, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. And then, slightly more jovial, on a slightly more jovial subject, the capacity of people to believe in marriage. It's like, love you forever. No, I don't need that prenup. But when you think of the divorce rate, I actually think the divorce rate is kind of sad, because I think as a society, we've kind of got out of the habit of working at things. So,
Right.
a number of people I've seen that have been married twice to each other twice because they knew that the divorce had been a mistake. But to go into marriage, and it's so easy to get married and then so difficult to get divorced. It should be completely the way around. It should be virtually impossible to get married and then dead easy to get divorced, because it should be so difficult that you had worked at it. And kind of the parallels in business. It's really easy to get into business. It's really hard to get out of it in a good way at the other end.
Yeah.
It's hard work. So, and it's one of the reasons why I say I am the expert in happier endings, and all of my clients get a happy ending.
That
Okay.
said, there's a lot of similarities inside of these relationships and business and employees and stuff. And it boils down to, are you willing to have the conversations you need to have to move forward and succeed?
Yep.
Right. So we'll tie it back to that. How do people reach out to you if they want to work with you, if they want to have you help them, with their business, or they have questions for you? What's the best way for people to contact you?
Great. If you see me on LinkedIn, that's where I live. That's my social space. It's Christine Nicholson, and you will. There's genuinely only one that you can see for me. I'm a business mentor of the year 4 times running, so that's kind of my little strap line. My website is christinenicholson.co.uk. There's loads of free resources there on how to get exit ready, how to get your business valued. You don't need to work with me unless you want to. There's loads of place information on there about how to get started. But if you then want to come and work with me, then there's a button on my website. And finally, I do a free quiz. It takes 3 minutes and it'll tell you exactly how exit ready you are. Doesn't matter where in the world you are. And it's at www.getexitready.co.uk. You will then end up with the report and a few emails from me, which are very easy to unsubscribe from if I'm not your thing. But equally, all my emails form a quick exit ready framework. So you can actually get every step that I ever deliver to my paid clients through my email marketing.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here and hang out for a few minutes. We'll call that a show.
Fabulous. It's been awesome. Thank you.
I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between 5 million and 30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.